This week happens to be Anti-Bullying Week in the UK. Sadly, bullying and harassment are widespread. Research shows that 1 in 4 people in the UK has experienced bullying or harassment in the workplace, and the NHS staff survey shows that bullying and harassment remains a particular problem in the health sector, with an extraordinary 1 in 5 staff reporting personally having experienced harassment, bullying or abuse at work from colleagues in the last year alone. It is a tribute to the extraordinary efforts of NHS staff that despite these pressures, the quality of care provided in the NHS remains unsurpassed. I have no doubt that the quality care you provide will continue, even as pressures rise during this second wave of COVID. My name is Hugh Townsend. I am a regional coordinator for the BMA in the South East Coast. I cover Kent, Surrey and Sussex. I'm also an industrial relations officer supporting collective casework across Kent and Sussex. In this presentation, I'm going to focus on challenging behaviour and how to beat it. All staff have the right to be treated with consideration, dignity and respect. Unfortunately, the BMA has a lot of experience helping members who have been bullied, harassed or victimised. Contrary to popular belief, your employer wants to make your trust a great place to work, and they want to promote a positive culture throughout. From a BMA perspective, we'd of course much rather be able to focus on helping you in other ways. In today's diverse workplaces, it's important to treat everyone with the same consideration and respect, regardless of things like their race, their sexual orientation, a disability, or their religion. As IRO for East Kent Hospitals, I initially created this presentation to support ECHUFT staff, but I note that currently 1 in every 200 member cases across the South East region is related to bullying, and hence I've tried to keep most of the content broad enough to be of use to others who may want to make use of the easy to share format via YouTube. I hope it's useful to you. In this presentation, I'm going to cover the legalities, the impact of bullying, a little bit about trust policies and some practicalities of what to do if you are bullied or you see bullying. And I'm going to end with a run through of some sources of support. Now, I do have some thoughts of my own on what organisations can do to challenge poor behaviour and to encourage civility, but that is not the focus of this presentation. Anyone keen to know more about governance and organisational change, I'd encourage you to look at the Sturrock report into bullying and harassment at NHS Highland, as well as the earlier Francis report, Time to Speak Up, which I'm sure you've heard about. They both have some very clear recommendations. There's also a great campaign called Civility Saves Lives. If you haven't seen it, then I would suggest Googling that. They have all kinds of resources from a TED Talk to infographics and podcasts. It's well worth a look. The BMA's recent Caring Supportive Collaborative survey showed that only 40% of doctors feel confident to raise concerns, with doctors reporting that they fear being blamed for systemic failings. This is at total odds to the recommendations of the Francis and the Berwick reports, which made it very clear that errors and failings need to be addressed through establishing a learning culture, rather than singling out and blaming individuals. Furthermore, it is clear that cultural problems within the NHS have a disproportionate impact on BAME doctors, with higher reports of bullying and harassment and referrals for disciplinary processes, which further impairs their ability to speak out. But I'm in danger of digressing to whistleblowing and wider NHS issues, so back to the focus of this presentation, bullying. So first, a little on the terminology. What is the difference between bullying, victimisation and harassment? Well, bullying is defined as offensive, intimidating, malicious or insulting behaviour, and it can be an abuse or misuse of power that is meant to undermine, humiliate or injure the person on the receiving end. Harassment, meanwhile, is defined as unwanted conduct affecting the dignity of a man or woman in the workplace. It could be related to age, sex, gender reassignment, race, disability, religion, sexual orientation, nationality, or any protected characteristics of the individual. And it can be a persistent, or even just an isolated incident. What's important is that the actions or comments are viewed as demeaning and unacceptable to the recipient. It is not the intention of the perpetrator, but the deed itself and that impact which determines what constitutes harassment. Victimization is subjecting a person to a detriment because they have, in good faith, complained, whether that's formally or otherwise, that they have been or someone else has been bullied or harassed. That can include isolating someone because they have made a complaint or giving them a heavier or more difficult workload. Now, whilst the title of this presentation was pretty all-encompassing, I'm actually focusing on bullying. Some of the traditional characteristics of leaders, such as being goal-orientated, energetic, assertive, or having a focus on results at any cost. There's lots of these characteristics, and they're often seen as strengths, but they can be experienced as bullying behaviour. Some examples of bullying are defined by ACAS as follows. The first is spreading malicious rumours or insulting someone by word or behaviour. Another example is copying emails or memos that are critical about someone to others who do not need to know. It could be ridiculing or demeaning someone, picking on them or setting them up to fail. It can be exclusion or victimization, unfair treatment, or even overbearing supervision or other misuse of power or position. It can include unwelcome sexual advances, touching, standing too close, display of offensive materials, asking for sexual favours, making decisions on the basis of sexual advances, making threats or comments about job security without foundation, or deliberately undermining a colleague by overloading them with constant criticism. Preventing staff progressing by intentionally blocking promotion or training opportunities. Do any of those seem familiar? I hope not, but if they do, today I'm going to tell you what to do about it. As I've alluded to, often bullies don't realise their behaviour is bullying. Most people, they don't actually go to work to make their colleagues' lives difficult. Truly malicious behaviour is mercifully extremely rare, but it is very common for poor managers to bully their reportees without meaning to. People can slip into inappropriate behaviour for a range of reasons, and this is particularly common under pressure, which, as we all know, is a bit of a constant in the NHS at the moment. But it's sadly worsened at some trusts where finances are a particular challenge. As I mentioned on the last slide, what matters is what the person on the receiving end of the behaviour feels, not what the person carrying out the behaviour thinks and feels. That's the legal interpretation too. What people find acceptable behaviour can vary widely. There can be substantial cultural differences with regards to the acceptability of things like physical contact or tone of voice and references to gender or religion. In the UK, bullying isn't against the law, but harassment is unlawful when it is related to one of the following protected characteristics, and these are set out in the Equality Act. They are age, disability, sex, gender reassignment, marriage and civil partnership, pregnancy and maternity, race, religion or belief and sexual orientation. Stress is the #1 cause of sickness absence in the UK, and workplace bullying is a key factor in more than 1 in 3 stress cases. Of course, bullying and harassment doesn't just affect those on the receiving end, it creates an unpleasant and unproductive environment for everyone. Interestingly, those who witness bullying at work are also more likely to suffer poor health and low morale. So bullying and harassment doesn't just affect those on the receiving end. It creates an unpleasant and unproductive environment for everyone. Inappropriate behaviour also has harmful effects for organisations. As a result, morale suffers, staff become disengaged, performance deteriorates, staff turnover increases, and the risk of legal claims and tribunal action increases. A case brought as a result of inappropriate behaviour may also damage the reputation of the organisation and the brand, And negative publicity can also have a significant impact on staff morale, thus reducing productivity. Sadly, that is something that may be familiar to staff at East Kent this month. It's pretty simple, really. Bullying and inappropriate behaviour is bad for everyone. It's your employer's interest to stamp it out and to support victims. That's something worth bearing in mind as we move on. Perhaps I've just answered this question, but I wanted to pick up on two relevant points here to demonstrate how you will be supported by your employer. The first is a staff charter. So this is the East Kent staff charter, and it's a commitment to creating a positive culture where the contribution of every member of staff is respected, colleagues are treated fairly, and all are valued for our individuality and diversity. So this was created back in 2015, and there are similar charters across the NHS. Some of the language may seem a little bit twee, but it raises important points and it's worth taking note of. Arguably, the key message is fairness and mutual respect, the importance of raising concerns and learning from mistakes. Essentially, my point here is you should be supported to raise concerns and know that you have a right, even a responsibility to do so. My second point is trust policies. Every trust will have a policy on bullying and harassment in some form or other. Often it's called the Dignity at Work policy. You can see on the slide the East Kent bullying and harassment policy. It's a pretty comprehensive one. It's just been updated at the Joint Staff Committee and it's available on the intranet alongside a toolkit for managers. Now it sounds pretty obvious, but having a look at your trust policy is a very good place to look if you experience or witness bullying. So what can you do? As I've said, you should definitely take some action if you see bullying or harassment going on. It's your responsibility as a colleague. Now, there are a number of reasons why an observer may not act, and I do get that. For example, you may not want to raise your head above the parapet. You might want to keep your head down. You might be worried about drawing attention to yourself, or you may not want to stand alone if other colleagues are not standing with you. There's something called the bystander syndrome, which is when you assume or hope that someone else will do something about it, and that's all too common. But my point here is if the observer does nothing, then the inappropriate behaviour is likely to continue. So let's say you've resolved to do something, but what are you going to do? Well, I'm afraid there is no one-size approach as every situation is different. But often the best course of action is to have a word with the receiver, the person being bullied. This will at least reassure them that they're not on their own and that they have some support. The observer and the receiver should then agree a way forward. In some situations, it may be appropriate for the observer to approach the bully directly. But the success of this strategy may depend on how well the observer knows the actor and how they respond to what the observer tells them. This approach tends to be effective with someone being inappropriate who have never considered that what they do or say can hurt other people. The role of the observer is crucial in the proactive management of the working environment. Anything an observer does to start people talking and increase awareness that there is a problem is likely to help both the receiver and the bully. So if you're thinking about doing this, seek advice and support from colleagues or professionals. Perhaps use your freedom to speak up guardian. Check the trust policy on bullying or dignity at work. And where there are repeated cases involving multiple members of staff or within a team which are persistent, then this is something that you could raise through the whistleblowing policy. And the crux, what if you're on the receiving end of bullying behaviour? What should you do? Well, there are two main approaches, the informal resolution or the formal route. If you think you are being bullied or harassed, or you have concerns about respect at work, firstly, I'd suggest thinking about the informal route. So spend a bit of time thinking about not just what you want to do next, but also what you want as an outcome. Talk to someone about it. Talk to someone you trust, maybe a friend, a colleague, or even a BMA employment advisor. You may decide you can discuss your concerns with the person yourself, with the bully, As I've said in advice for a witness, it may be that the person may not know that their behaviour is unwelcome or upsetting. An informal discussion can help them to understand the effect of their behaviour and perhaps agree to change it. However, this is always going to be an extremely challenging conversation. It's a difficult thing to do, but in the right circumstances, it may be all that is required to achieve the necessary change. If you take this approach, tell the person what behaviour you find offensive and unwelcome, the impact it has on you, and how they might be able to approach the situation differently, and the benefit of doing so. Another option is perhaps if you think the conversation could use a mediator. There are occasions when the conflict between two people has just gone on for too long, and positive discussions are unlikely. Perhaps you feel the person in question is impossible and just won't listen to you, or perhaps they are much more confident or articulate or senior than you, and you don't feel you're able to put your point across. So if you feel that effective communication is not possible, and that you could be railroaded in the discussion, or you just don't feel confident enough to do so, then you may want someone else in the room who will help make sure you are listened to. This could either be a facilitator, such as a senior person that you trust in your department, or perhaps an independent mediator. Most trusts have a pool of trained internal staff who are on hand to help facilitate conversations, to resolve disputes and concerns in the workplace. And there's further information around that via your intranet or your HR department. The BMA can also offer trained mediators, and we should be one of your first steps if you're a BMA member. We can provide you with confidential advice and support in resolving your concern. But if you're unable to discuss the matter with the person, the bully, another option is to raise your complaint with your line manager or a member of the senior management team and explore other informal options with them. Perhaps you may want to discuss with a workplace contact. Many organisations have these staff who act as a listening ear to those who have a concern about respect at work or feel they are subject to inappropriate or unacceptable behaviours. So the role of these workplace contacts is to listen, to give emotional support and signpost to appropriate actions. So it's an impartial, not a directive role, but it can be very useful. There's a lot of other options which could be taken alongside or instead of formal or informal approaches. And they include the EAP, the Employee Assistance Programme. So many organisations, including East Kent, have a staff welfare scheme which provides free 24/7 telephone support. Staff are also able to access the Health Assured web-based service, which gives access to a range of information on physical and mental health. There's more details on your intranet. Another option could be to contact your hospital chaplain. So hospital chaplains are there for all staff to listen and to provide support. They can be a great ear to listen to your worries. Or you could contact the Wellbeing Advisor via Occupational Health. The Health and Wellbeing Service can support staff to manage your stress and anxiety and teach you how to become more resilient to stress. Staff can self-refer to the Health and Wellbeing Advisor. Or you can speak to the Freedom to Speak Up Guardian or champions. There's at least one in every trust, and they may be able to offer advice and signpost you to the best local support. If you're a junior doctor, then the Guardian of Safe Working could be another option for support. And don't forget the BMA. I'll cover the advice we offer in a few minutes, but there are a range of options, whether it's talking to your local negotiating committee rep at a trust or to an employment advisor, or even our counselling service. Another tip I wanted to mention was that I would encourage you to keep a diary. If you later go down the formal route, this could be very helpful. Whilst I would strongly encourage taking some action if you see or are the victim of bullying or harassment, I would urge you also to be realistic in expectations. It's not easy to raise concerns, and sometimes it's difficult to know what to do. If you raise a concern, you should always receive feedback and never be victimised. If you feel that you are being victimised, then please contact the BMA or your Freedom to Speak Up Guardian as soon as possible. Remember, it's likely that you may need to continue working with the bully for some time, so make sure you stay professional and polite. If an informal approach doesn't resolve matters, or you or even the management team thinks the situation is too serious to be dealt with informally, Then you make a formal complaint under your trust policy. Often, and this is the process at East Kent, there is a bullying and harassment complaint form. For East Kent, that's Appendix 2 of the toolkit, and you have to fill that out. It's fairly short. The trust then has a duty to investigate sensitively, promptly and confidentially. An investigation of allegations will normally require limited disclosure on a need-to-know basis. The identity of the staff member raising the complaint and the nature of the allegations will be revealed to the person the complaint is about so that they are able to respond to the allegations. Some detail can also be given to the potential witness, but the importance of confidentiality will be emphasised to them. Another option I wanted to mention, if you believe colleagues may be in the same boat and perhaps the bully is more senior, is to provide a collective statement. You may find that as a group you can support each other through the process and you'll have an even stronger voice together. The BMA can help you to coordinate this if you want to. So, what will happen once you've completed the form? Well, wherever possible and through discussions with all parties involved, the Trust will try to ensure that the staff member raising the complaint and the alleged harasser or the bully are not required to work together while the complaint is under investigation. A case manager and case investigator will be appointed by a member of the care group senior management team, and a meeting will be arranged with the case investigator. Often a HR rep may also attend if required. Should you choose not to attend a meeting, the case investigator can conduct their investigation using the form that you filled out. After the meeting, the case investigator will carry out further investigation, which normally involves meeting with any witnesses, meeting with the staff member who you've complained against, and they look through all of the available evidence. At this stage, you may be thinking about confidentiality, and it can be a worry. In normal circumstances, the witness statements would not be made available to individuals concerned, although a summary report may be provided on conclusion of the investigation if requested. In exceptional circumstances, the written information given by individuals may have to remain confidential. Where confidentiality is necessary, this will be explained to the staff member. Also of note is that if a formal complaint which cannot be resolved informally is raised against a medical or dental staff member, then the investigation has to comply also with the process as outlined in MHPS. Bullying is a serious complaint. So let's say the investigation has completed. So following completion of that, the case investigator then submits their report with all their findings to the case manager. The case manager has to consider the report and make a decision as to whether to either uphold or not to uphold the complaint of bullying and harassment. And they have to think about whether there's any recommendations to make. If the case is not upheld, then the case investigator will write to all parties outlining this decision, and they will explain whether or not further action needs to be put in place to support all parties in moving forward. If the case is upheld, then the case investigator will write to the staff member the complaint was raised against, so the bully, and this should be in the form of a statement of case, which will be presented by the case investigator at a formal disciplinary hearing. Any statements gathered or evidence will be shared as part of this. An outcome letter will also be sent to the staff member who raised the complaint. And if the staff member raising the complaint is dissatisfied with the outcome, then you can make a formal appeal. But it's worth noting that after this, the employer may take further disciplinary action, yet your role as a complainant ends here. And you wouldn't necessarily be told there was going to be a disciplinary, and you wouldn't be told what the outcome of the process was. At that stage, you'll just have to trust that the employer has taken appropriate action, and you may or may not see what that is. It's important to mention here that all staff have a right not to be victimised for making a complaint in good faith, even if the complaint is not upheld. So don't let the process put you off making a complaint. And remember, there's plenty of people out there to help support you with this. It's just possible that someone watching this suddenly thinks that actually They may be guilty of bullying behaviour themselves, and so it's worth taking the time to self-reflect. Do people think you're a bully? Most of us choose to work in the NHS because we care about people. The majority of us are not bullies at the start, and may not even consider ourselves to be bullies now, but the everyday stresses of work can cause us to behave differently. Unacceptable behaviours can become normalised and even part of the culture in the working environment, make it easy for us to lose perspective of how we come across. To those on the receiving end of bullying behaviour, it can feel very personal and deliberate, but the vast majority of workplace bullying does not come from any intent. In these pressurised times, it is more important than ever that we all reflect on our interactions with our colleagues on a daily basis and identify where we are in danger of being perceived as a bully. To help with your reflections, ask yourself if any of the following statements could be true. Are there people in your team whose viewpoints are not important to you? Do you feel that you have it tough so others should too? Do you respect everyone you work with? Are there any cliques in your team? Do you tend to be the only one talking in meetings? Do you often get irritated in the workplace? Do you tend to blame others when things go wrong? Are your interpersonal skills sometimes lacking? Do you express negative views about people in your team to others? If you answered yes to any of the above, there is a danger that you could be perceived by others as exhibiting bullying behaviour or contributing to a bullying environment. You should always ensure that you have someone to talk to, as being accused of bullying can be as stressful as being bullied. As well as talking things through with your line manager, there are a number of other avenues for you to receive further support and advice. There is a wealth of support available, and I'll try to cover just some of that now. However, there is generally so much support available and so many compassionate colleagues to turn to that I couldn't hope to cover it all. The following scratches the surface of available support, and I hope it is of some use. As part of our new programme of work to raise awareness of workplace bullying and harassment within the NHS, the BMA have done a lot of work to improve the support that doctors receive. We provide a number of services to help and advise you and anyone experiencing bullying at work, but also to those who may have witnessed examples of bullying and wish to raise concerns. We support BMA members in a variety of ways. Often, the first port of call is to contact our expert team of employment advisors who can ask the right questions to determine the correct route for your concerns. Our counselling service is staffed by professional telephone counsellors 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And we've got a peer support service that runs alongside counselling, which gives doctors and medical students in distress or difficulty the choice of speaking in confidence to another doctor. It's confidential peer support with an emotional focus. You don't even need to be a BMA member to make the most of that. We have a wealth of practical guidance on what constitutes bullying and harassment. So this covers what individual doctors can do to improve behaviours in the working environment, how to address poor behaviour, and what support is available for doctors who may be under pressure. There is a list of positive and negative behaviour examples. We've also got the BMJ e-learning modules. They provide insight and strategies to help you address bullying and harassment. There's one on preventing bullying and harassment. There's one in assertiveness in the workplace. There's one on the art of effective feedback. One on understanding resilience in the workplace. And one on dealing with conflict. All extremely useful. We've also designed 2 posters which you can display in your workplace. One of which is on the slide here. One highlights the issues, the extent of the problem, and what the BMA is doing about bullying and harassment. And the other highlights the sources of support available to BMA members. That's the one that's on the slide. So please do find out a little more. Have a look in the BMA library if you want to find out about books. Have a look at your trust policy. Have a look at BMA webinars. Have a look at the non-clinical masterclasses or the BMJ e-learning modules that I mentioned. There's so much support out there. Please do make the most of it. Here's the BMA number for our counselling service, our employment advice service, and the link to our guidance pages. Please do get in touch if you have any questions. By playing our part we can create a working environment in which everyone is treated with the dignity and respect that we all deserve. In a harassment situation, there are often three players. There's the actor who is bullying someone else, there's the receiver who is being bullied, and there's the observer who sees the bad behaviour. Dealing with inappropriate behaviour requires all three to take responsibility. So the actor needs to be aware of the effects of their behaviour and the potential repercussions for their career. There are many factors that can contribute to the unacceptable behaviour, including short-term personal circumstances, financial pressures, family issues, health issues. Furthermore, because of increasing demands on healthcare services, many health professionals face added pressure, stress and exhaustion at the moment, and that has a potential to impact on how we behave. But there is help available. It is up to you to seek the relevant support by talking to someone within HR or self-referring to your occupational health department or contacting the BMA's Counselling and Doctor Advisory Service. So please do seek help. The receiver needs to make action and make an assertive response or to take the matter up with the relevant channels in your organisation. And the observer needs to offer support and, if appropriate, challenge the bully over their behaviour. So my key message in this presentation is, if you see bad behaviour or receive bad behaviour, please seek advice and take some action. I hope that has been helpful. Thanks to my colleagues Ruth Baird and Letty Smithers for their input to that presentation. But remember, if you see bad behaviour or at the receiving end of bad behaviour, please seek advice and please do take some action.